Aloha, Inspired Moneymaker. Welcome to Inspired Money. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back to Inspired Money, where money meets meaning. I'm your host, Andy Wong, aka Advisor Andy. Thank you for joining us for this first episode of 2026. It's the perfect time to get better with our money mindsets and to start the year off right. Let me start by asking you something. If money decisions were purely logical, why do smart, well-informed people still panic, procrastinate, or second-guess themselves when it matters? The truth is, money is not just about numbers or strategy. It's also about psychology. Fear and greed kick in, old money stories from childhood quietly run the show. Our brains take shortcuts that may feel right in the moment, but can be costly over time. And in high pressure moments, market swings, big financial decisions, irresistible offers, emotion often beats reason. Today's episode, the psychology of money, understanding the emotions and behavior that impact financial decisions, is all about what really is happening behind the scenes when we make financial choices and how to take back control. We'll explore why willpower is not always enough, how to spot the hidden forces shaping your decisions, and what practical frameworks can help you think more clearly when it counts. We've assembled an incredible panel of experts who live at the intersection of behavioral finance, financial therapy, and real-world investing. People who study these patterns, teach them, and help others navigate them every day. Their insights are practical, eye-opening, and immediately useful. So if you've ever wondered why money sometimes feels harder than it should, or how to build a calmer, more confident relationship with it, you're going to want to stay with us. Before we jump in, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Runnymede Capital Management. That's my family's fee-only fiduciary investment advisory firm. If you're starting the new year and wondering, am I actually on the right financial path? You're not alone. Most people do not need more headlines or hot takes. They need a clear, personalized plan. And that's exactly what we do at Runnymede Capital Management. Right now, I'm offering Inspired Money listeners a free financial plan, a short, no-pressure call with me. We'll talk through your goals, your questions, and what's really going on in your financial life. Investments, retirement, taxes, whatever's top of mind. No sales pitch, just clarity. So getting started is easy. Go to inspiredmoney.fm/getplan, answer a few quick questions, and schedule a call that works for you. I'm happy to help you make sense of things and start the year with confidence. That's inspiredmoney.fm/getplan. Now let's bring in our guests. Our first guest is Brian Portnoy. Brian is a founder. He is the founder of Shaping Wealth, a leading platform focused on psychology of money and what he calls human-first financial guidance. A former hedge fund and mutual fund manager, Brian is also the best-selling author of The Geometry of Wealth, where he challenges the idea that money is the goal and instead shows how it can support a more meaningful life. Brian, welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you.
I'm delighted to bring back Saundra Davis. Saundra is a U.S. Navy veteran, nationally recognized leader in financial coaching and financial therapy with deep expertise in closing the racial wealth gap. She's the founder of Sage Financial Solutions and serves as the director of financial planning programs at Golden Gate University, where she helps train the next generation of coaches and planners to deliver more equitable, human-centered financial guidance. Saundra, welcome back.
It is so good to see you again, Andy. Thank you for inviting me.
Next, I'm excited to welcome Henrik Cronqvist. Henrik is a leading behavioral finance scholar trained under Nobel laureate Richard Thaler at the University of Chicago, with research published in top journals like the American Economic Review and Journal of Finance. A former dean and vice dean, he's now a professor of finance at Chapman University and is building the world's first behavioral finance AI lab, bridging academic research with real-world financial decision-making. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Andy. Great to be with such an amazing panel today.
I'm excited that you're here. And finally, we're joined by Kristy Archuleta. Kristy is a professor at the University of Georgia. She's been called the godmother of financial therapy. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's she's a certified financial therapist, specializing in how money impacts relationships and well-being. He's a co-founder of the Financial Therapy Association, an editor of leading journals, and co-author of Psychology and Practice, Financial Planning Essentials, bringing research-backed insights into how people actually experience money in their daily lives. Kristy, welcome to Inspired Money.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here with everybody on this panel.
We're going to have fun. I think in an effort to better understand our thoughts and managing our emotions around money, let's get started with segment 1.
Market stress triggers ancient instincts. The amygdala floods your system with cortisol. You feel urgency. Buy high, sell low. The rational brain fades. This is the primal investor. Reactive, short-sighted, reward-seeking. But smart investing requires structure, not instinct. Dopamine highs from market gains push overconfidence. Fear-driven cortisol spikes push panic selling. The solution isn't willpower, it's system design. An investment policy statement set in calm moments becomes a guidepost during chaos. Automation removes emotional guesswork. Cooling off periods prevent rash decisions. Pre-mortems counteract blind optimism. The gap between market returns and investor returns, roughly 3%, a behavioral penalty. The primal brain doesn't understand compound interest or volatility. It only wants relief or reward. Long-term success depends on minimizing its influence. Don't rely on discipline alone. Build rules that keep you in the market and out of your own way.
Brian, if you can get us started, when it comes to managing risk and reward, what advice can you offer for making smarter financial decisions?
So we're going to start off with a narrow, easy to answer question. I appreciate that. So, what came to mind watching that slick video was the old JP Morgan, like the original John Pierpont Morgan, if that was his name, who said that nothing corrupts one's financial judgment more than the sight of your neighbor getting rich. When he said that, your neighbor was your neighbor, or maybe somebody you saw at the office. Now we've got 8 billion people on social media. Everybody is your neighbor. And my sense of working with financial advisors and their clients is that we are going a little bit haywire because all we do all day is watch others, and it's not particularly healthy. And so, on this esteemed panel, I bet you there's going to be like 12 fantastic suggestions. I would say that we have to take into account the fact that we live in relatively unique times. I know smart people aren't supposed to say this time is different, so maybe I'm not so smart, because I am saying this time is different. And we are seeing our neighbors getting rich, or at least that's what they're putting on Instagram. And we have to find ways to, as individuals, as clients of financial advisors and such, to sort of put up some boundaries so that we aren't overwhelmed by the inevitable sense of greed or fear, depending on what input we're taking.
Saundra, what does putting up boundaries mean to you?
How did I know you were going to the hippie perspective? Okay, full disclosure, I'm from San Francisco, born in the 60s. So I'm going to go with awareness, self-awareness first, and then having mindfulness practices, not necessarily from a rigorous or religious perspective, but just to understand what is happening for you. Like, one of the things that really helped me was understanding when urgency was present. Right? Just when is it present? When am I noticing what happens to myself, to my brain, to my heart, even to my physical, my somatic expression? And then recognizing that these survival responses are not character flaws. These are normal parts of our personhood. And the goal isn't to suppress the emotions. The emotions are valid. They give us information. But what we can do is learn to regulate them. And we can regulate them by learning breath work. We can, many therapists, and I know Kristy does this for sure. There are many ways that we can learn visual cues, tactile things, ways that we can come back. Because when the body can slow down, when we can slow down the emotion, that executive function, that prefrontal cortex can come back online and allow you to recognize that the thing is there. Yes, the greed is there. Yes, my neighbor online has got more views and more clicks, and everything is viral this, viral that. And we can learn to regulate the fear and the anxiousness by going inside with the most important aspect, very deep compassion for ourselves, which I think is the main thing that I'm hoping, to Brian's point, that is different this time.
Awareness, I like that. Kristy, can we identify when investing behavior is really an emotional coping strategy?
Yeah. And I think Brian and everybody on this panel could probably point to different cues, but there's definitely things that play out for us in terms of when we could recognize anything really emotional that comes up, not just with investing, but really it's going to look similar as to other areas of our lives where we might become anxious, like joining a podcast not too long before after you've been asked, or not to throw you under that, no, or getting up on stage and talking to it in front of a bunch of people, whatever that is, that kind of that fear that sticks into us. But there are definitely cues. You can feel your hands. I mean, like physical, easy things. You can feel your hands getting sweaty and like kind of tacky. And if you really pay attention, you start to feel your hands getting cold, or your feet getting cold, your extremities cooling off, because your blood is rushing to the center of your body, because that's our fight or flight response. So we have to have blood in our heart to run away from a big bad tiger, or in this discussion, investment. So there's some definite cues that you can feel physically if you are self-aware. And I think Saundra's point is really underlying a lot of probably what we're going to talk about, is that self-awareness is huge. And really, we're just not a very self-aware species, unless we've spent a lot of time doing self-awareness type of work.
Well, I think that, we read a lot of articles, we see a lot of stories on TV. So we understand that fear and greed can throw off our decision-making process. For Henrik, if fear and greed were neural networks, how would you retrain them for better investing behavior?
That's a great question, Andy. I think lots of my colleagues here on the panel have talked about biology, and biology is, of course, an amazing thing. In fact, that's why we are able to sit here today to participate in this discussion, is because we are human beings, and we have a lot of positives, but also comes with some challenges. So, we have this tendency to take actions. And we want to do things, and some of us more than others, I guess. I would certainly concede that I have a lot of bias to action myself. I remember one of my bosses once said, well, Henrik, sometimes the best thing that you can do is to do nothing. And that is not very intuitive to a lot of us as humans. We want to take action. Although in the particular domain of investment, that can sometimes lead us to not so great outcomes. But we have to recognize that we come from this concept of being humans. We grew up in and we evolved in a system where biology and selection was important. It was important to take action and do things, and that's why we're triggered to do that. So I think we need to build in various kind of speed bumps into our decision making. And for different people, what that speed bump is could be different things. The most extreme version would be maybe you shouldn't have an app on your iPhone where you're driving in the car, you're sitting at a red light, and you're putting in a trade. So that may be one way to build in a speed bump. But for different people, what speed bump they have may be a different thing. But I think to counter that action bias that we're all born with, we may have to build in those speed bumps into our financial behaviors.
Guilty as charged. I think I need to put my phone in a lockbox in the car. Brian, any final comment about automation and how we can use that as a tool to circumvent our emotions?
Yeah, I'm glad it's exactly where my mind was, especially listening to everybody. My thought is that sometimes the best way to make a decision is to not make it at all. In other words, can you outsource that? Can you delegate that decision perhaps to an automated system? Think about everyone and their paycheck. Twice a month, a sliver of that paycheck maybe goes into some sort of retirement savings account. And once you've checked the box that you want to do that, or now with certain defaults, didn't uncheck the box that was already designed to do that, you're off and running. And you've made a wonderful decision by not thinking about it at all. This isn't to say that we are so frail and so flawed that we can't make good decisions, but the rise in automated investment technologies over the last generation has actually been one of the greatest wealth generators and accumulators that we've ever known.
Yeah, I like it. And I think that in this information world that we're in, we can make decisions when there's less noise and less distraction. With that, let's go to segment 2.
Your financial behavior isn't random. It's a script, often written decades ago. These unconscious beliefs, shaped by early experiences and family dynamics, guide your money decisions without your awareness. A script like money is bad or success means status drives choices that seem logical in the moment but are emotionally programmed. The first step is awareness. Identify your flashpoints, early money memories, and trace your beliefs back to them. Then challenge their truth and assess the cost. What have these stories held you back from? Rewrite them. Replace "I'm not good with money" with "I can build financial confidence through action." Test the new script with small, intentional behavior shifts. Over time, these actions create new reference points, positive flashpoints that reinforce your updated belief system. You don't need to erase the past, you just need to stop letting it run the show.
Kristy, what's one money script that may look healthy on the surface, but may actually be avoidance in disguise?
What a good question. So when we talk about money scripts, we tend to talk about a couple of different ones that are most popular and done so by some research and things that Drs. Brad and Ted Klontz have done over a number of years. And so when we think about it, it's money worship, money vigilance, money avoidance, and money focus, right, Saundra? Did I get them all? But one of the ones that, I teach a bunch of financial planning students. And so a lot of them come in and I have them do a couple of different money script type of tests. And one of them is the Klontz money scripts inventory. And so many of them come up as I'm money vigilant. Well, that makes a lot of sense. You're going into a financial planning profession. That's not true for everybody, but a lot of people come up with money vigilance and it's almost like they're like, yes, I got money vigilance. That means I am very vigilant about my money and I know what to do with it. And I'm very aware. But money vigilance, even taken to an extreme, can look like avoidance. It can, to what you were saying, Andy, it can look like I am almost like withholding things that I actually need and need to take care of myself because I am so vigilant. It is actually one of the ones that creates a lot of anxiety for people and a lot of stress for people when it's at its peak.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have a money story that you're personally proud to have unlearned?
Boy, okay. putting me on the spot a little bit here. First of all, I want to say that Inspector Gadget bedroom in the video, I want to know if that's real and where can I search it?
Me too.
I need that too.
That was unbelievable. I don't know where that comes. That's stock footage. No, I mean, look, we coach financial advisors for a living. And I'm pretty comfortable being vulnerable in that context. One thing I talk about is the experience of growing up with two parents who did almost nothing but fight about money. I actually didn't go into a financial services career. Sort of 30 years later, I discovered this. Saundra, please, you can analyze me offline. We can do that later. But when I think about sort of the behavior I observed and the way that I, as a young boy, responded to that, and then I do the work, the journaling and the narrative structure to attach that to the way that I think about money now, not just investing, but saving, spending, borrowing, insuring, and all the different dimensions of money life. Today's not the day to go into my deep money story, but I will say that personal exploration for me has been really healthy. And what we encourage with advisors, let alone their clients, is do the same. We've had the experience, having run money story exercises for several hundred advisors, that almost 90% of them have never once written down what money means to them. It's a wonderful open space, if structured properly with psychological safety, to create the self-awareness that Saundra started out with, that I think is just the absolute most important point.
Henrik, I've seen that you've done some research, I think more applied to, value investing or type of investors, what you're born with, what's inheritable at a biological level versus what are external life experiences and that impact. Similarly, can any of your research apply to money stories? Like, is it inheritable? Can they be rewritten?
Andy, I think it's like so many other things in life. It's nature and nurture, right? Or both are at play. We talked about a bit in the first segment, a bit about the biology side and what we are what we have in our DNA. But then it's also a function of what experiences we have, what we live through. And sometimes it's not only what we live through, but it's what our parents lived through, or our grandparents, what they lived through. There may have been a family bankruptcy, or someone lived through the Great Depression, and that can have an important effect, not only themselves, but also for future generations, because that's how we are taught things at home. I remember another personal story for me. I still remember the day that my dad came home and said, "I'm finally paid off the mortgage on our entire house that we grew up in as kids." And I was studying finance at the time when that happened. I said to myself, is this really a good thing? Shouldn't you have some debt? Because you have, interest, deductions and all of that. I was very young at the time, so I didn't know all these different details. But I did reflect on this. This is not necessarily a good thing. But for my dad, that was critical. To have no debt was absolutely a goal in life. And I guess my point is that, different people have different carry with them, depending on their particular experiences that they have had, different behaviors, whether that is towards debt or that is towards investing in, being a value investing person, like Warren Buffett. It could be due to his particular upbringing and so on. So we carry this with us. I think that's something that is important to recognize.
Saundra, how do you help someone rewrite their money story, especially when their lived reality right now still reflects the old one?
Andy, I don't know how you expected to get all of this genius here in one thing and think we're going to be done in a short period of time. This is a retreat level conversations we're having, right? All day long. So the first thing that I want to acknowledge is Brian's comment that I think was so important. Meeting our perspectives, whatever it is that we're experiencing, with curiosity is much more likely to lead to that healing journey than judgment or analysis, which can be anxiety producing, right? So in my world, how I operate with this concept, and many of you know, I know most of the folks on have some degree of relationship with me already, but I work primarily with low and moderate income folks. So I'm not working with the high net worth and ultra high net worth folks. What what I can say is the notion of a legacy burden and a legacy heirloom. We talk a lot about the legacy burdens of financial implications. You can have two children born into the same household hearing, we can't afford it, we can't afford it, we can't afford it. One may say, I'll never live like that again and save every dime. The other may say, I'll never live like that again and spend every dime. We just never know how that imprint is going to work on them, right? And so when we think about this concept of inherited behaviors, I do think it's important for us to recognize and reconcile. I'm all in, and Kristy knows this, I'm all in on internal family systems right now. And that's because we are a system within a system within a system within a system. And so the external, if we take the Black community, for example, if we take the external environment of systematic financial oppression, and we wonder why people who, get a boost in their paycheck may go out and do something that doesn't seem wise in the moment. We have to put that in the context of the system that they're operating in. Someone once said to me, well, you're never going to coach people out of systemic financial oppression. And that's absolutely true. But what I can do is I can coach them to navigate a system with self-awareness, self-compassion, and developing a plan to live within a system that in some situations, particularly for people who are dealing with poverty, designed to oppress them. So I know I probably didn't answer your question directly, but I really think it's important to say that, because I think we often think about it from investing in those topics, but we might not think about it when it comes to just basic survival, managing debt, and those kinds of things that so many people in our country in this day and age are dealing with.
Kristy, did you have something to add?
I just really appreciate Saundra's comment about systems theory, because anytime it's brought up, it's my favorite. I'm trained as a marriage and family therapist, so everything I look at is through a systemic lens. And it's such a powerful way of looking at individuals and family dynamics. And we all know that family dynamics have an impact, not just on our individual selves, but us as individuals have impacts on our family couple dynamics. And so I think Saundra said it earlier, maybe it was Brian, that there's so much that we could spend and talk about here, and so many ways in which people can help rewrite their own money story, and how they see money, and then end up what they're doing with their money can change as well.
Yeah, Andy, can I follow up to that? I think another assessment that is really helpful. I'm a big fan of money habitudes, and the reason that I like money, I know, Kristy, I know, that's why I wanted to make sure we said it, because I think that it is a very forgiving and very loving way to look at the areas of our lives where we might want something to be different. When I didn't come into this field until I was in my 40s, after making every money mistake possible. Back then, I had 3 habitudes. Planning was not one of them. I had giving, spontaneous, and carefree. Fast forward 20 years and a lot of revisiting what I believe and why I believe it and how it shows up. Now I have a little bit of everything. And so we can do it without shame and blame. And I think to Henrik's point earlier is that when we try to press ourselves into a new way of being, it sometimes can have the opposite reaction.
I'm hearing that this is just a worthwhile practice. So it's important to pause and take the time to think about, what does money mean to you, and try to, elaborate on your past money stories, and then be compassionate and realize that this is an evolving process. It's not just set in stone. With that, let's go to segment 3.
Your brain runs ancient software, efficient but flawed. These shortcuts or biases sabotage smart investing. Confirmation bias filters out anything that challenges your views. Overconfidence leads you to mistake luck for skill. Anchoring locks your thinking to irrelevant numbers. Loss aversion keeps you clinging to bad bets. Recency bias misreads patterns. Herding urges you to follow the crowd. The fix? Systems. Use a devil's advocate journal to question every investment. Keep a decision log. Base valuation on fundamentals, not market price. Test losing positions with this prompt. Would I buy this again today? Create a checklist that trends must pass to be worth owning. These tools reduce reliance on gut instinct and override the glitches. Mistakes happen not because you're irrational, but because your brain is too human. The goal isn't perfection, it's prevention, avoiding the common errors that cost the most.
Henrik, in what way is technology helping us to overcome biases? And in what way is technology amplifying biases instead of fixing it?
That's a very good question. I think definitely there is both. But I think, Andy, we got to recognize that overcoming investment biases, cognitive biases, is very, very hard. I think it's hard for so-called experts, people on this panel and others as well. And even the fixes of some of these cognitive biases may be contaminated by these biases. So yes, sure, I understand that people are overconfident. Everyone else is overconfident, but I'm not. I'm the exception. I'm a big fan when it comes to, if you also look at technology, Brian talked a bit about automation, to have multiple different accounts. And I think that's something that a lot of the big trading platforms have that now. For most people, the biggest account that they probably should have would be a more passive account for retirement savings, long-term focus, indexing, diversification, low fees, all of those things that we teach in business schools, and those of you that practice financial advice, that you give those advice pieces to clients. And then maybe smaller accounts where you can use that to test out different investment theses that you have. And I think that's one way to go about it.
Brian, I think in the moment, most of us think that we're making logical decisions. What's your view? How do we identify our biases and how to make corrections?
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of the word biases because it's kind of hard to use that in application to people and not come across as negative and critical. And I think it sort of elides a really important narrative that, humans have adapted to a complicated and noisy world for many, many millennia. So I don't like to say biased. I like to say normal. And so when you are normal in the market, what could that possibly mean in terms of maybe more of a focus on today than tomorrow, getting overwhelmed with the amount of information that we're expected to absorb? A lot of it, and I'll be a broken record on Saundra's account, like a lot of it comes back to self-awareness. So it's not that I'm flawed, it's that I'm human and that I'm normal and I'm processing a noisy, potentially dangerous world in a particular way. I think it's really important, I'll be a little bit more specific and practical, to think about where a financial plan comes into view and how helpful it could be. I think it's critical to stress that the portfolio should act in service to the plan, and the plan should act in service to our purpose, PPP. Mm-hmm. And so it's so easy, Andy, to get focused, whether it be because of our new Robinhood app on our phone or 24/7 financial news, to look at the moving pieces. Well, those pieces should aggregate into a sensible portfolio. But a portfolio without a plan is having a vehicle without a direction and a map. Mm-hmm. And until we have that most of the time, what is the point? We're going to be so open to our, let's say flaws or biases causing problems. How the plan then serves our purpose, that's a whole nother 3-day retreat that the four of us should organize.
That would be fun.
It really would.
As long as we get the crazy furniture in each of the segments, it's going to be some wild mansion.
You see, I'm all giddy about the alliteration, right?
Yeah, totally.
Saundra, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, so the first thing, I really appreciate the conversation, because I think this is really what made me decide to go into coaching, because coaching separates that identity from the adaptation, right? Coaching helps people navigate, who am I in this context? And when the portfolio, if you will, that is a product of the plan, which is how it should be. And that's why I love what Brian said so much, is that if it's not in service of the person, what is the point? And I think earlier, the first segment, they talked about having an investment policy statement. And I believe that, and Dave Yeski and Elisa Bowie have done amazing work around financial planning policies, which of course I'm more in touch with, primarily because people in the financial range that I work with, they've got to have a policy on saving, a policy on gifting, a policy on debt management. How do they want to manage their financial lives in all of the ways, so beyond investing, but then also recognizing that know which part of you is driving the decision, and recognizing that in the same way that money scripts are, to Kristy's point, neither good nor bad, it's the same with that money habitudes idea. It's not a bad part of you. It's a part that may not be serving the purpose that is best and your highest right now. And so you can learn more about that. And usually working with a professional is helpful, because we get to be an objective observer. Whether you do that pro bono, again, not a sales pitch, it could be pro bono support, it could be counseling support, but people getting to hear an objective observer who also notices when your self-judgment and your critique is actually harming you. We will not abuse ourselves into better financial behaviors.
Kristy, give us your perspective through a licensed marriage and family therapist lens, because it's oftentimes not just looking at your own overconfidence or whatever it may be. There's a whole nother dynamic if it's a couple or a family.
Absolutely. That brings a whole nother level of awareness. So not only being aware of ourselves, but being aware of the dynamics in the system that we live in. And so we're all, as Saundra explained this beautifully earlier, I don't think I can explain it any more simplistic or to the point than she did, but living in a system, we're all parts of multiple systems that are layered within one another. And so understanding how those systems work. And so an example of a system is, for example, my husband and I are a system. We are a couple system. We're a parent system. We have 3 children. They're their own system. They're individually a system. And so within our family system, we have a couple of those systems that I just mentioned, but then we live within, we don't physically live with them, but we are part of a larger family system that includes our parents, our siblings, our grandparents, etc. And then our communities that we live in, our socioeconomic pieces. Saundra grew up in San Francisco. I'm from itty bitty tiny middle of nowhere Oklahoma town that no one's ever heard of, and probably none of you will ever hear of, because I had a graduating class of 11. And so it's very, very small. And so that's a very different type of community, type of system that I grew up in and that I was orientated to. And so all of those have different types of influences on our family dynamics, on our couple relationships, how we see money, how we see it differently. And so, yeah, again, this could be a whole retreat in and of itself. And I don't think I answered your question either.
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. Thank you for that. Let's move on to segment 4.
Marketers know your brain better than you do. They use urgency to trigger panic, social proof to push conformity, and fear to sell false safety. Scarcity pressures you to act fast. Authority bias silences your questions. Liking makes you trust strangers. These aren't coincidences. They're engineered responses. The defense? Slow down. Use a 24-hour rule before acting on financial offers. Separate pitch from product. Evaluate the fine print, not the personality. Run unsolicited advice through a trust filter. Most importantly, build checklists and comparison processes before you're in the emotional moment. Once triggered, your decision-making is compromised. But with pre-committed defenses, you stay in control. You don't need to outsmart the game. You need to not play it on their terms. Your attention, trust, and capital are targets. Don't hand them over just because someone says, act now.
That looks like a fun game.
This retreat is going to be unbelievable.
It is.
Brian,
Voting teddy bears.
yeah, hitting teddy bears with tennis rackets.
Tennis rackets.
For the listeners who don't have the visuals, Brian, what emotional lever do financial marketers pull that you find most ethically troubling?
You threw have to actually think harder than I have time for. But look, there's a book on this, and Robert Cialdini called it persuasion, and we all know what the techniques are, and we can't resist them most of the time. We want to feel like we're included in a larger group, so we are sort of wide open for social proof. There's a whole number of techniques. It's funny how a little bit of thinking goes a long way. And, you did, joking aside about the video, mention in the talk over the idea of pre-commitments. Just a little bit of a pre-commitment goes a long way toward helping us avoid rash decisions. That, 24-hour or even 1 hour cool down provision. You see an ad on Facebook or Instagram or some other channel, and there's such an impulse to engage. If you build a habit, you build the muscle memory. No, I need to wait for at least 1 hour before doing this. There's a good chance that after that hour, it's not going to hold that same appeal because the dopamine that has flooded your brain an hour ago has now largely dissipated. So, I don't want to say that what marketers do is unethical, but I will say that there are proven methods for persuasion, and a little bit of preparation on what those are and how to think through them will serve all of us very well.
Saundra, what makes marginalized communities perhaps more vulnerable to emotionally charged financial messaging?
Scarcity, stress, wanting the same things for their children that everyone else does. So I will actually call so much of the marketing, particularly in financial products, unethical. When we look at payday lending, when we look at extractive policies, when we look at predatory lending, when we look at rent-to-own type businesses, they are extractive and they are deliberate and they are preying on people who have the very most to lose. Payday lenders' research will show that most of the people who speak out in favor of them have taken out 7 loans or more. At interest rates that are just beyond unethical. And so I had one of my very first coaching clients 20 years ago when I started in this field. She was a PhD, a doctor, struggled to get through finish school, but the debt was so oppressive. And she was working in community hospitals to get the loan forgiveness. And once she finally got to the point where her confidence, her compassion for herself, all of these things were wonderful about how she was living her life. All of her financial goals, she met them over our years of working together. But she used to have emergencies in Ann Taylor. And so what we agreed is that once she got to the point where she had things where she wanted them, she was in Ann Taylor one day and they offered her the credit card, or, you get 10% off. So what we did was tap in. So she called me and we talked about what would choosing this card do for her and what would it, how would it impact the goals that she set for herself. So she made her own decision. I'm a coach. I don't tell people what to do. She made her own decision. And as an objective observer, I was there to be a touch point for her in a time where emotions were running high. She felt a sense of pride after being in financial distress. Now they're offering her the credit card. She was able to do things that she had not been able to do before. And so sometimes positive emotions can also walk us into financial distress if we're not watching out. And so having that touch point, whether it's something that you carry on your own or a phone call that you make, can really be helpful.
Henrik, what are you teaching to students to prepare them and protect them for living in the real world?
Yeah, that's I think a lot of things that we're teaching related to. As Brian said, I don't like the term bias either, but by habit of 25 years using it, I guess I'm also subject to behavioral bias myself of repeating the term. Sort of the headline for this segment is, the way I think about it is the buyer's bias is the seller's opportunity. We talk a little bit about the 24-hour rule, which I think is a good one. But a lot of humans, the way we think about that is, I will then lose valuable time by not taking action now, by waiting a long period of time, as it may be perceived, 24 hours in the time of stress. But I think any individual investor that build their investment strategy on making such quick decisions that they have to take action now, guess what? They will lose out to the algo hedge funds anyway. They don't even use humans for decision making. They use a server that is sitting across the street from the NASDAQ stock exchange. So I think that those are helpful things to consider. I think the awareness is something that we can teach about different ways that humans, they tend to act. But as I said before, many of us, it's so ingrained that automating things and making sure that we have a system that is in place that is helping us out. That's something that we can teach young people that don't have so much experience, making sure that they save for retirement and that a lot of things are on autopilot. And it adds up over the years. After decade, it adds up because of the power of compounding, and that will make people better off. And I think we have, on a positive note, we have come a long way. If you just look at the way people save for retirement, say now compared to 25 years ago when I started my own career, it's quite different. The way the investment vehicles that are provided to people, the way 401k plans are set up. So, on a positive note, progress is slow and it's insufficient, but a lot of things have happened over a couple of decades.
Well said. Progress is good, even if it's coming at a slower than preferred rate. Kristy, how do you help people process the emotional aftermath of realizing that they were manipulated?
Oh, wow. Might be a longer answer than you want. Two of the things that keep coming up for me as we're talking here is self-confidence and self-empowerment. And those are two things that one of the things I get to do at the University of Georgia is oversee and supervise our students learning how to do financial planning and coaching and financial therapy services with clients. And so I'm not working directly with clients anymore, but I get to do it through students kind of. And so that is one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing, is helping people become self-aware. But when you become self-aware, you also can gain confidence in yourself and you can empower yourself. And I think one of the things that's super important is when we're talking about these systems that we're putting in place, regardless of what it is or number of things that we might put in place, it needs to work for that individual and it needs to work within the system that they live in. And so it might not work for everybody. Automation might work for a number of different things if it's available to you. But sometimes we don't always have all of those options. And so figuring out what's something that works and works well and that I can try. And if it doesn't work, we don't have to hold on to that anymore. We can change it and do something different. And that's part of that self-exploration piece, that as we learn more about ourselves, we gain more confidence in ourselves, and then we're empowered to actually act upon those things. And again, giving people the choices or helping them come up with the choices or options and what's going to work for them is super important and very helpful. And so when you get into the piece of, I made a decision and I went and bought a Gucci purse that I couldn't afford, then, and I feel bad about that decision and I'm regretful now. Now it's time I can take that time. Why did I do that? How can I do some more self-exploration? And then what are some mechanisms and things that are going to work for me that are simple and very doable for me to put into place? Maybe I need to phone a friend. Maybe I need to chop up all my credit cards, whatever it might be. Those are kind of drastic, but phone a friend is really, really helpful. So whatever it is that might work for a person, making it simple and doable actually helps people empower themselves to keep doing those things.
I like it. Phone a friend. Let's bring it home and go to the last segment.
Most financial decisions overestimate success and ignore failure. The pre-mortem flips that. Imagine the decision has failed. Now explain why. This mental shift bypasses optimism bias and surfaces risks you'd otherwise ignore. You're not asking what could go wrong. You're asking what did go wrong. That framing unlocks honesty. Write down every possible cause of failure. Group, rank, and address them. Adjust the plan or walk away. When emotions run high during market crashes, big investments, or sudden opportunities, this tool slows you down. It converts fear or excitement into structured thinking. No decision is immune to bias, but the pre-mortem gives you distance. It lets you challenge assumptions before reality does. The goal isn't to eliminate risk. It's to identify the blind spots you can still do something about. In chaos, this isn't just planning, it's your mental firewall.
Brian, you spoke earlier about the importance of financial planning. How does imagining failure create clarity instead of fear in financial planning?
So I love the pre-mortem. Absolutely love the pre-mortem. It's something I use in my personal life. It's also something that we use in our coaching practice all the time. And what I've found is that it is one of the simplest and most powerful techniques we can use to make better decisions. The idea of imagining failure and then working back from that failure to the various decision nodes where things could have gone wrong and saying, okay, now here I am in present day again. What can I do now to hedge or mitigate or eliminate those bad decision nodes that get me to that outcome I don't want? When it comes to not having enough for retirement or not saving, for that vacation home that you want or whatever, there's so many different financial scenarios you could come up with. I have found that this is an idea that people can really wrap their brains around. It's one thing to do a postmortem. Hey, we did the thing. How did it go? Oh, it didn't go well. Well, what can we learn? The idea of basically future casting your future self and working back from there, people not only get it, they enjoy it. And it's Gary Klein and Annie Duke who have done a lot of the pioneering work on this. Big fan. And I think society writ large would be better if we did pre-mortems.
Kristy, what signs tell you someone's emotionally ready to do a real pre-mortem?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think when people are confident, they're motivated, and they're willing to do something, that's a great sign that they're emotionally ready to walk through this process. Even maybe a little bit even more in the contemplative stage of making whatever change it is that they're going to have to make. Because typically when we're looking at whatever it might be, an investment decision, whatever the financial decision is, we're going to have to maybe do something different in our lives in order to make that happen. And so I think that's one of the helpful things about this concept, is that then, okay, am I ready to do this? Am I ready to lean in? And that actually helps us figure those things out. And it also kind of gauges us emotionally to figure out those things too.
Henrik, any advice for maybe using data-driven forecasting? How can we do better to, I guess, analyze the situation and identify some of the blind spots?
Yeah, I think, another great question, and one that would require another 2 hours probably. Also as an educator and dealing with some of the youngest people, the ones that are entering into markets for financial advice, for financial planning, for investment and so on. One trend that I'm seeing right now, and I think the rest of the panel probably also said is that we're getting this more and more, I feel, this intermingling of investment and gambling. And it's well known, there's a lot of work already in the academic literature saying that individuals as investors tend to like lottery stocks with a lot of upside, penny stocks and that kind of stuff. And, I'm a little bit maybe worried is a strong term, but we see more and more of the integration now of investment and gambling. And I think for people that maybe have a stable career and a few decades of experience, they can see through this. But if you're a young person right now, if you're in college or right out of college, you get this you might get this impression that investment is about gambling. Of course, to some extent it is. I cannot tell. I know what the stock market went up about 16% last year, but I have no idea what it will do this year. So in that regard, there is an element of uncertainty and risk, of course. But I am a little bit concerned, and I hope that for those of us that are educators, particularly focusing on really young investors, to try to decouple this idea that long-term investment, yes, there is an element of uncertainty, of course, but it's not gambling in the sense of I'm now gonna, put in a bid for what they're gonna talk about on an earnings call for a particular company next week. And so that's a trend that I think is very important for society, and something that will not play out right away, but longer terms over the next few decades, what we do now and the behaviors that young people form now, that will have, in my view, a very important implication for how they may think about investment, even when they get into their 30s, 40s, and 50s.
And Saundra, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the decisional balance matrix. And what that does, it's a concept out of motivational interviewing. And what that takes is that's how I became familiar with it. It may have other origins, but that's how I became familiar. What you do is you look at the benefits and the cost of each situation. So rather than just a pros and cons list, each decision has benefits and cost. And so you can neutralize some of the emotions by getting the idea out there. So changing or not changing. Am I going to change the behavior? What are the benefits and what are the costs of changing the behavior? And then if I do change whatever I'm changing to, what are the benefits and what are the costs? So then I can take a step back and take a look at it more objectively. I don't think absolutely objectively, but I think you can be more objective. So I love the idea of the pre-mortem, and in coaching, often we tend to lean toward positive psychology, which can often ignore the impact of a plan that has gone awry. So I love the idea of being able to step back and look at it. And the tool I use is a bit different than the pre-mortem concept, but it is still very similar.
Brian, I want to bring it back to you since you're a big advocate of the pre-mortem. What do people miss when they only plan for success?
Failure. I mean, that's the point of the exercise. I mean, it's not emotionally comfortable to think about things going wrong. What's nice about having a process, meaning something that's written down, something that's repeatable, and something that's scalable, is that it's a legitimate, emotionally calm way of exploring kind of what goes off the rails. And so to be able to say to yourself, your partner, a client, hey, this is a time-tested process to walk through what goes wrong. Let's do this together. That's a lot different than saying, hey, you might screw this up. How can that not happen? So, buying into tone, the right tone, buying into an actual process can help. So, what's missed in being overly sanguine, overly saccharine, overly hopeful is the likelihood that things don't go right. Let's not forget that the very best investors in the world have like a 51 to 49% hit rate. It's little differences that accumulate over time that lead to success. It's not the home runs. We pay attention to the home runs. Oh, I got into NVIDIA when it was a small company. Oh, I bought Bitcoin when it was, not a well-known thing. And then you hear about those stories, comes full circle to the JP Morgan quote about seeing your neighbors getting rich. That's not the way people get rich. They get rich most of the time in most places by the accumulation of small wins over long periods of time.
Yep, that goes back to what Henrik was saying about the power of compounding. I think we're going to end it there. Thank you to our guest panelists. We covered a lot today. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with my favorite inspired money moment that really connects everything we talked about today. The real challenge with money is not that we don't know what to do. It's that in emotional moments, our brains can take shortcuts. Fear, excitement, old money stories, even subtle persuasion can quietly hijack our decisions. The edge is not stronger willpower. It's about having systems in place before emotions show up. So here's one thing that I'd like for you to try this week. Think about one financial decision on your mind right now, big or small. Take 2 minutes and write down what emotion is attached to it, what story you're telling yourself about that decision. In one rule or pause you could add so future you does not have to rely on gut instinct alone. That short reflection can completely change how you make decisions going forward. If this conversation sparked a new way of thinking about money, share this episode with someone who could use it, and make sure that you're subscribed to Inspired Money so you do not miss future conversations like this. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Find me by searching Advisor Andy. Inspired Money is created and produced by me, along with Bradley John Eaglefeather, who runs the show behind the scenes during our live streams. He edits each segment. Chad Lawrence brings everything to life with our graphics, animations, and additional editing. Last but not least, a huge thank you to our incredible guests today. Be sure to check out their work and dive deeper into their insights. Brian Portnoy, founder of Shaping Wealth and author of The Geometry of Wealth and How I Invest My Money. Find out more at shapingwealth.com. Saundra Davis, founder of Sage Financial Solutions. She's advancing financial coaching and equitable access to financial guidance. You can get more information at sagefinancialsolutions.org. Henrik Cronqvist, he's professor at Chapman University and behavioral finance expert. You can find him at sites.google.com/site/Henrik Cronqvist. I'm going to put that in the show notes because that's a lot of words. And finally, Kristy Archuleta, professor at University of Georgia. You can find her at uga.edu. She's co-author of Psychology and Practice, Financial Planning Essentials. And does anybody have anything to plug or share?
I don't want to plug anything, but I want to share two things. One, I thought this was great, and it's an honor to be on with you, Andy, and these other panelists. I want to come back to Saundra's first point, which is that this is a home game. This is about self-awareness. We've all been in the market for decades, and I think we can all observe that success in money life generally, and investing specifically, is very much a game, if you will, of self-awareness and self-regulation. So for as much as we want to get wrapped up into kind of the sexiness of the market and the big noise and trends, what I learned today, what I heard reinforced was that it really starts at home by looking in the mirror. And that's not always the most fun thing to deal with, but I think it remains an evergreen truth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I follow Brian on that one? So yes, and This goes for the advisors, for the professionals, as well as the clients that we serve. And we often hear you can never take a client where you haven't gone yourself. And I do believe that to be true. And to do it with kindness, to do it with compassion. It is a journey. Kristy mentioned about being in contemplation, being with ourselves on the journey, and recognizing how we get the support that we need for whatever our circumstances are. And then finally, the client is the expert in their own lives. Professionals may have information, but some of the reasons that plans fail is not only the behavior of the client, it's also a disconnect and a lack of attunement from the professional to the client. So I think both of those things must be in place for it to be effective.
And I love what Saundra said, because I was going to say this as something very similar, but she said it far more eloquently. So I just want to leave it there. But I just want to reinforce what she said, and Brian too.
Henrik, any last word?
It's amazing, Andy, that we live in a world that has more technology and information than ever in the history, right? And it's probably the most difficult time to really stay rational. Isn't that sort of a paradox? But I think the thoughts by my fellow panelists have been great. And while we come from very different backgrounds and perspectives, I think that there's a core set of principles that emerged, and it was really interesting to see that happening here. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thank you to all our panelists for sharing their insights today. So many valuable takeaways. Thank you, Inspired Money listener, Money Maker, for tuning in. We have only 4 shows left in this series of 100 episodes. Upcoming live stream topics include the future of work, adapting to changing career landscapes, and investing in art, unlocking the world of fine art investments. Join us next week. That's Wednesday. I think that's January 14th. I hope that I have that right, at 1 p.m. Eastern. I look forward to seeing you then. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everybody.